Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today I'm going to share with you how to use living books for science. Last week I shared with you how to use them with history, and the week before that I shared with you how to use them for language arts. And I know that for a lot of people, using living books for language arts and history seems to come a bit more naturally than using them for science. So I know that there were quite a few people who were looking forward to hearing me explain how to do this today. I think the reason that science is so intimidating to people is because of all of the things that it encompasses. So they really like to have the structure of a textbook. But if you think about it, science is all about exploration, and it isn't really something that can be confined to a box. It isn't something that can be confined to little snippets or paragraphs in a textbook. So to me, using living books for science are the best way to approach this subject. And I'm going to just give you some tips on how to do that today. And I want you to remember that there are many other ways that you can use living books for science. I just want to give you some ideas that you might be able to use into your homeschool to incorporate and see what works for you and what doesn't. So first of all, the very first thing that I have to say to you when it comes to using using living books for science is that if you are a creationist, you are going to want to look through the books that you are using first, especially if you are using books from the library, because they are secular books. Now, if you're a Christian and if you want to go out and purchase creationist science books, that is awesome. That is a great way to do it. With our family, we're on a budget. We have so many kids that we're homeschooling that we really do rely on the library, and we also rely on a lot of other really inexpensive places to get our books. So for us, that doesn't always mean that we are getting Christian books. So you really do need to scan through it and see what is in those books that you are reading, because very often they will not align with our beliefs about how the world was created, sometimes when the world was created, with evolution and all of those sorts of things. So when you go through these books, there are many options for what you can do if you find things that don't fit with your worldview. The first thing is you can completely choose not to use that book. But I will say that, again, if you are relying on the library, you may find that the books come few and far between, that they're not going to counteract your views in any way, shape, or form. But that is always an option. Another thing that you can do, especially if you are using them with younger children who you will be reading the books to, is you can simply just choose to skip that part, or you can choose to maybe summarize it in your own words when it gets to that section. Another thing that you can do with your older children especially is you can allow them to read that part, or you can read that part to them, and you can have a discussion so that they can understand how different people are looking at this particular topic. And then you can explain to them, this is a really good time for apologetics, you can explain to them why it is that we believe, or you believe as you believe. And you can kind of give them both sides of the argument, because that is one way that they can really use their critical thinking skills and learn how to follow evidence. Okay, so that is just one area that I really wanted to make sure that I covered, because you're going to find that with science that there are going to be lots of things that don't particularly line up with the way that you see things. Again, if you are a Christian or if you have creationist beliefs. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, some ways that you can use science for living books for science. I keep getting the two of them like mixed up. But one way that you can use living books for science is just for interest-led learning for your kids. You can allow them to simply go to the library and just have at it. Choose all sorts of books that they would be interested in, and then letting them bring them home and go through the ones that they would like to use. You could let them read them. You could let them look through them. Depending on their age, sometimes you could read them to them. You could assign them maybe for silent reading. You could even have them notebook with them. There are so many different ways that your kids can incorporate interest-led learning in with these library books. They would just be a springboard for a particular topic. I know that many of you have seen my videos on our interest-led notebooks, which most of my kids are doing animal notebooking, and they have become experts on so many animals because of the way that they have been able to just go to the library or either tell me what animals they were interested in, and they were able to actually delve through that information for themselves. Another way that you can actually use science, I did it again, living books for science, is that you could actually choose a particular topic that you want your kids to go over, or you could even choose a particular branch of science, say geology. And you could then go to the library and you could browse that section covering that topic or that branch of science, and you can collect any number of books. Just gather as many resources as you can find. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to use all of them in your homeschool. What I do a lot of times, because when I go to the library, I usually have my kids with me. So that means that I don't really have a whole lot of time, especially if I have my 5-year-old with me. She likes to run the aisles when she gets tired. So what I usually do is I will just gather up a bunch of books. And then when I get home, that is when I will actually go through them and choose which ones I'm going to use and how I'm going to use them. And again, when we use our library books, and not always library books, of course you can go out and purchase your own books, but when we are using these books, we use them to enhance our unit studies. We use them for our notebooking. And again, we just use them to give our kids knowledge in that area, which for instance here is science. And actually right now I'm going to stop and I'm just going to show you the different types of books that you can actually use. Now, a lot of times when we think of biographies, we think of history. But if you are reading a biography, for example, on Nikola Tesla, that is history and that is also science, especially this book right here. My 19-year-old daughter actually got this for me. It has a biographical information in the beginning of the book about him, and the rest of the book is actually his inventions, researches, and writings. So it actually has his actual writings about his inventions. So books like these would be excellent for high schoolers because they are more advanced. Obviously, you wouldn't want to use that with an elementary school child, but you just have to look at how much more deeply that is going to get into a topic than using a textbook that covers a whole vast array of subjects in say 800 or 900 pages. So they don't really, it covers a lot of information, but it covers it very shallowly. And using living books to cover science really allows for you to just get into things more deeply, help them to really see things in a much, much more comprehensive way. Another type of books, I use these for my read alouds with my littles. This is called I'm Trying to Love Spiders. And it gives little arachnid facts inside of it. So you definitely use these if you do morning time with your kids, or even just any time of the day. You could read these to your littles. And this is incorporating scientific facts to your children. And I have to say that I really adore Magic School Bus for my kids. A lot of times if we are learning about a topic, if I know that Magic School Bus or even Wildcrats has an episode that will go with that, we will very often watch that episode as well. And YouTube also has a lot of great documentaries and sometimes even little snippets, 3 or 4 minute videos for children who may not be able to sit for like 45 minutes, because even my older kids, they sigh sometimes when I tell them that we're going to be watching something that is 45 or 50 minutes long. And we'll get into that a little bit later with using videos. But and this is just another one. Now, this is something that is called a trade book. I know that a lot of times when I talk about trade books in my videos about living books, I will get people asking me in the comments what trade books are. They really aren't sure. Trade books are simply books like these, books that you will find in the nonfiction section of your library. That is just very simply what they are. So it's nothing mysterious. It's just nonfiction books. And again, I have to say that this just demonstrates how much more deeply you can go into a certain subject, because we've got one book right here on black widow spiders, and there is a section of the library just on spiders that has so many different types of spiders, books on all of these types of spiders. And if you have a child who is particularly interested in that area, that is the perfect way for them to get into this topic, rather than just reading a couple paragraphs of a few different types of spiders in a science textbook. Okay, so this is just another example of a trade book that we have here in our house. And I'm just showing you that these are all things that you can use in your homeschool instead of textbooks by, again, reading them aloud to your children. Yes, you can read aloud nonfiction books. I know that a lot of times we tend to look at maybe fictional books or sometimes biographies or autobiographies as being good read-alouds, but you can definitely read books like these aloud too. A lot of times when I read them to my kids, we will just read a certain number of pages each day, and then they will look at the pictures. We'll talk about it, and a lot of times we will do activities that either are in a unit study about that subject, or we might even come up with our own activities, or again, watch videos on those areas. Another great type of book that you can get for your kids for science are books that have experiments in them. And that is another way that you can use living books. There are so many different types of books that have really awesome experiments in them. This one someone gave to us as Backyard Scientist, and it gives you different activities and experiments that your kids can do just with things from around the house out in the backyard. And this is actually perfect for my kids because they love to be outside. So yes, definitely incorporate hands-on activities, hands-on science activities with your kids to supplement the living books that you are using for science with them. You can also, again, science experiments. I picked this one up at Five Below. You can still see the sticker there. And this too has all types of really fun experiments for your kids to do, and very often with things that you just have from around the house. So I'm just going to let you look at some pages in here. These are really cute because I think I just bumped the table, but it tells you different things that you can do. And yeah, it even has, this one has experiments, it has dates that you did them. But again, I just found this one at Five Below, and this particular one is chemistry. And so if you look here, some of the activities are make a loaf of bread, make candy models of molecules, separate a compound called starch from potatoes, demonstrate that living things contain carbon. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but it just goes to show you that for $5, you can really get a quality book for your kids to find lots of fun experiments that they can do just because they're interested in doing it, or because it might actually fit in with something that you're actually learning about. So how you use those experiment books or those activity books are really up to you. Sometimes you might actually page through them and incorporate them on certain days because they fit in with the rest of the things that you're learning. Other times you might choose just to let them lie around the house so that your kids can maybe see them laying there, you know, called strewing, and let your kids just pick them up, page through them, and think, wow, you know, this would be really fun for us to try. So how you use them is entirely up to you, but they are a great resource to have on hand. And again, I have to point to YouTube. YouTube has so many amazing channels that have great science experiments for your kids to do. So definitely, you know, let your kids check that out. Check it out with them, but let them find things on YouTube, experiments that they would like to try. And again, as I mentioned earlier, documentaries are also really abundant on YouTube. So that is just something else that you could enjoy sitting down and watching with your kids. Now, when it comes to experiments, and this is really important, I think that it is crucial that when you are letting your kids explore the world, you should let your kids make up their own experiments also, because I think that a lot of times what we're doing in these experiment books is fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's showing your kids how scientific principles work, but they're all experiments that they're doing because someone else has already done them, and so you already know pretty much what the outcome is going to be, and it's just something that they're copying, which again can definitely be very informative for them. But how much more fun is it to let your kids actually come up with experiments on their own? Now, maybe someone before them has tried it already, but if they don't know that, it is a brand new discovery to them, and it could be even a brand new discovery to you. And that is really what science is all about. It's about making new discoveries. So yes, while it is very, very beneficial to let your kids, do these activities that have already been done before, or that they are actually following step by step, definitely give your kids the freedom to just figure out what they're going to do on their own. I read, now I'm not sure if this is true because not all biographies are very accurate, but I did read about Thomas Edison, about how his mother pulled him out of school because his teacher said that his brain was addled. And so she actually set up his own little science lab in their basement and had it just filled with all sorts of materials for him to use. And that really encouraged him to get to where he eventually did. And, that is actually a really great idea for you to do with your own children. And I'm not saying that you should have like hydrochloric acid laying around your house, but, just let your kids have free reign. Get them some flour, get them some baking soda, some vinegar, some baking powder, some cornstarch, just things that are, I would say, depending on your child's age, if they're younger, you definitely want things that are not poisonous or really bad for them. But yeah, most of the things that I mentioned, I think all of them are actually things that a lot of times you would have in your kitchen anyway. So let your kids experiment with those. Just, keep them set aside and just tell them, you can use those for experimenting. And kids really, they really enjoy that. They like to discover things. So let them do it. Also, another thing that can actually go right along with using living books for science is when your kids especially are learning about animals or about nature, about biology, is field work. My oldest son, now he's not I always say my oldest son, but he's my oldest son who's at home. He's actually my second oldest son. He actually, for biology, most of his work was done out in the field at the creek, observing things in real life. And then he would use the living books that we had as, I'm sure that you can hear my son's game too. I could hear it going here. But anyway, he could use them as like a supplement to his creek learning. Okay, and besides just doing field work, field trips, of course, are the perfect supplement to using living books for science. And, going to the zoo, going to nature preserves, going to factories maybe to see how things are made. We have about 2 hours from us, we have the Hershey's chocolate factory. And about half an hour from us, we have the Crayola factory. And we have a science center that is very close to us. And there are so many different places that you can also take your kids to help them see things in action or to see things that other people have done. And again, these are great ways to supplement the living books that you are using. I just want to make sure that I've covered everything because I'm not sure if I did. I actually think that I did. Oh, no, I didn't. There's one more thing that I see now. If you are a little bit unsure about just going ahead and choosing living books based on a topic or on a branch of science, and if you're feeling a little like a lack of confidence that you possibly will not be able to cover everything, which I'm going to tell you, you're not going to cover everything. There is so much stuff to learn that it is impossible to cover everything. But I know that especially if you have an older child, so like someone who's in high school, so a teenager, you might be more comfortable using a textbook table of contents as a guide. And I forgot to bring a table of contents here with me. I'm looking, I don't have one. But all that you really do is if you have a science textbook for the particular area that you would like to cover lying around your house, sometimes you could even just go online and look up the table of contents for certain science curriculums. What you can do is use that as an outline of ideas of things that you can actually get books on, get living books on to cover these topics. Because again, textbooks are great for the structure. They're great that you know that you're going to cover this, 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 and this. But the problem is that a lot of times they don't cover enough of it. And they also don't make it very interesting. And very, very often what happens is your child might have an intense interest in something. Say if your child has an intense interest in reptiles, and then their textbook might only have like 1/4 of a chapter on reptiles. And you know, what a letdown for a kid who could not wait to get to that section on reptiles, and then it's like 10 pages long. No, not even. They're usually not even that long for reptiles. I'm thinking maybe like 3 pages long on reptiles, and then bam, it's already finished. Where, you know, you could make sure that you cover reptiles, but cover it in depth for your child to really let them focus on the things that they're interested in. Because remember, those are the things that they are going to learn the most, are the things that they are interested in. So by all means, use that table of contents and make sure that you get, you know, trade books. They're still living books. Trade books or some sort of living book on, you know, say for example, tropical rainforests, and then you could get them on tundras, and then you could get them on grasslands, depending, you know, I'm just giving examples. But you can get books that are actually colorful, they're written in a more interesting way, and again, they're just deeper than what they're going to get in that textbook. And you can do that through the entire textbook, and you have that liberty to spend more time focusing on those areas that your kids really, really have an interest in. You know, if they're not so interested in the tundra, okay, just spend a couple days learning about the tundra. But if they're really interested in the tropical rainforest because of all the animals in there, or because they just like to learn about the canopy and everything that goes on in that area, it's a great ecosystem. So definitely spend as much time as you want on that area. So that's just the great thing about homeschooling, is that you really can tailor it to fit your family's needs. You can tailor it to fit your child's interests. And you, as the parent, you need to remember that you need to work in your teaching style, the way that you like to do things, so that you are comfortable with what you are doing. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and you would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. And if you like my work, I would love if you would visit my Patreon page and just look at all of the really neat rewards that I have for my patrons there. And I hope you have a great day.